So it's January 21st, 2022 at the VIHE, and we're doing Servitude Part 1. I find it fascinating that here in the Western Ocean, Rupa Goswami gives the bulk of his attention as far as the delineation of the 5 primary rasas to servitude. So this is Western section of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. We want to acknowledge the help that we've gotten from Bhanu Swami's translation of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which has been a huge part of the basis for this course, as well as David Haberman's translation. We've also referred to Waves of Devotion, and we regularly consult with people such as Hari Parshad, Vijay Somasundaran, Rudayananda Maharaj, and we got some materials from Raj Kishore. All right. So again, this is part 1 of Servitude. This is covering the Nectar of Devotion, chapters 36 and most of 37. Someone asked a question about 37, about meeting and separation, that will be much more covered in the next class. So this is Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the 3, 2, 1 through 92. So 3 is the Western Ocean, 2 is the second wave of the Western Ocean on Servitude, and verses 1 through 32. And there's a repeating pattern in this ocean of briefly describing what is the rasa, then describing the vibhava alambana vishaya, then the vibhava alambana ashraya, then the vibhava udipana, then the anubhava, sattvika bhava, vyavichari bhava, and then the staibhav of the rasa. And in describing the staibhav of the rasa, Rupa Goswami describes degrees of love and meeting and separation. And that is a repeating pattern throughout this entire Western Ocean. So basic understanding. Now here is a little different from the other primary rasas. All the other primary rasas, Rupa Goswami basically just has one verse that when the staibhav mixes with the other bhavs, it becomes rasa. But here he's asking, what is priti? Priti, this servitude rasa, can also be called, we usually call it Dasya rasa in this but it can also be called priti rasa. So Rupa Goswami brings out that there's some contention here. He says, Sridhar Swami in his commentary on Bhagavatam 10:43-17 says that servitude is the highest rasa. Now that's maybe a little perhaps shocking for those of us in ISKCON. You know, we're all thoroughly trained that Madhurya is the highest rasa, but here you have Sridhar Swami saying that servitude is the highest rasa. And then Rupa Goswami quotes Lakshmi Dara, the writer of Nama Kaumudi, who says Priti is the sthai rati of Dasya rasa. Now, just a little review that the rati is staibhav, it's synonymous. Staibhav means the basic affection. So here Lakshmi Dara says this basic concept of affection is the basic connection of the rasa. Rasa is when things are combined, of Dasya rasa. And then Sudeva says that this priti is the rasa of neutrality instead of the rasa of servitude. So here Rupa Goswami gives his basic definition, which he gives in every wave of this ocean. So when priti or adoration or affection achieves a pleasurable nature, Prabhupada calls it dasya, not priti, by the vibhavas, the anubhavas, the sattvika bhavas, and the vavichari bhavas in the hearts of devotee, then it's called priti bhakti rasa or dasya bhakti rasa. Again, to remind everyone from the Southern Ocean that when these things combine together, it's like if you're making a pizza or you're making a smoothie, you take all these ingredients, you put them together, and then you have a whole taste where you can somewhat discern the different elements, but really they become together. So you taste the smoothie, you can say, oh, there's the pepper, or there's the yogurt, but at the same time, they're together. All right. So there's two main types of servitude, two main types of Dasya Ras or Priti Ras. One is Sambrama Priti and one is Gaurava Priti. And in this class and the next class, we're only going to be looking at the Sambrama Priti, which is why we have that highlighted here in yellow. So the Sambrama Priti, and then the class after that, we'll be looking at the Gaurava Priti. Sambrama Priti is someone who identifies themselves as a recipient of mercy and they act as a servant. And this is covered in Nectar of Devotion, chapters 36 through 39. The Gaurava Priti is generally someone in Krishna's family, one of Krishna's children or one of Krishna's younger brothers or sisters. Vasudeva has 16 wives, and each of them have a lot of children. And so Krishna has a lot of younger brothers and sisters. And of course, he has 16,108 wives, each of whom have at least 11 children. So he has a lot of children and a lot of younger brothers and sisters. So that's covered in Nectar Devotion from the end of chapter 39 through chapter 30. So we're going to be looking just at Sambrama Priti today and next week. All right, so first we're looking at the Vibhava for the Servitude Rasa in Sambrama Priti category. So Vibhava is again the stimulants, what stimulates. There's this existing love, the Staibhav, and what stimulates it. And again, a recap from the Southern Ocean. This is in two main categories, what Prabhupada calls basic and impelling. So alambana is basic and udipana is impelling or the stimulants. And alambana has two subcategories, Vishaya Krishna and Ashraya, the devotees. So if a person has a basic feeling of servitude, seeing Krishna, especially particular aspects of the Lord, stimulates that feeling of servitude. The other devotees who are in servitude also stimulate that feeling of servitude. And then there's certain aspects of Krishna, his qualities, so forth, so on. When seen as separately from Krishna, Krishna's qualities seen as part of Krishna is the Vishaya, Krishna's qualities seen separately. Like, oh, Krishna, you are so merciful. That's Vishaya. Krishna's mercy is amazing, is Udipana. Okay, we're going to look at this Ashraya section, the aspects of the Lord that stimulate the internal feeling of servitude. And we're going to be discussing this. So please take notes as we go through this on which of these aspects inspire you to do service. So the Vishaya for servitude in Sambrama is the Lord's form. So the two-armed form of Krishna is the alambana for the inhabitants of Gokula. So in Vraja and out of Vraja, it can either be Krishna's two-armed form or his four-armed form. So here we have a picture in Dwarka and then another picture of Lakshmi Narayan. So Rupa Goswami describes the Lord's form in Vraja. He says, when Krishna walks near Govardhan Hill, inhabitants of the heavenly planets as well as this earth feel transcendental bliss and consider themselves the eternal servants of the Lord. In other words, they see this form in Vraja, they, oh, I want to serve him. The two-armed form of Krishna out of Vraja, if a dark cloud is endowed with lightning and decorated with the sun and moon, it is similar to Krishna with dark complexion and yellow cloth, holding the chakra like the sun and the kanksh like the moon. And again, seeing this form inspires one to serve. Out of Gokula, the four-armed form, Lord Vishnu is very beautiful with his kastuba jewels, conch shell, disc, club, and lotus flower. He is also very beautiful riding upon the shoulder of Garuda. But now the same Vishnu is present as the enemy of Kamsa, and I am completely forgetting the opulence of Vaikuntha. Of course, there are those in Dasya Ras in Vaikuntha as well. All right, so the stimulation of the Lord's qualities, these are qualities that act as an alambana or basic stimulus, basic for bringing out one's feeling of love. And again, these can also be considered separately as udipanas, but here they're in the category of alambana. All right. And again, take notes on why these particular qualities would stimulate servitude, from whose bodily pores come millions of universes, an ocean of mercy. Now, you remember that one of the main definitions of servitude is that one feels, I am a recipient of Krishna's mercy, the owner of inconceivable energies, always equipped with all perfections, the origin of all incarnations, the attraction for all liberated souls, the supreme controller, supremely worshipable, all cognizant. Why would that make somebody want to serve? Fully determined, fully opulent, the emblem of forgiveness. Here we have Krishna forgiving Indra, who tried to kill all of his devotees. The protector of surrendered souls. Munificent how Krishna gives jewels to the fruit seller. True to his promise, how Krishna protected Arjuna, even when it meant attacking Bhishma. Expert, we have Krishna here getting those 7 bulls to win Satya. All auspicious. Lakshmi Sahasra Satya Sambrahma Sevyama. Powerful, he could defeat even Jambavan. Religious. How Krishna dealt with the Shamantaka jewel was a good indication of his religiousness. Eye of the scripture. Friend of the devotees. Magnanimous, here again we have giving jewels to the fruit seller, giving her jewels for a few fruits. Influential, even among the great demigods. Very grateful. He just received a flower garland from the florist Sudama in Mathura, and he gave him liberation and all material opulences. Reputable, well known even among the demigods, full of all strength, who could kill even Kamsa. Submissive to pure love, how kind he was to Sudama Brahmana. The only shelter of devotees who are attracted to him by the affection of servitorship. So now we're going to have a breakout room. And for 10 minutes, we're going to discuss which of these aspects of the Lord, which of these qualities especially inspire us in service. So if the admins could set up the breakout room. Set for 20 minutes. It's got to be set for 10 minutes. Hare Krishna. All right, now we're going to go on to the Vibhava Alambana Ashraya. And this is complicated. I'm very grateful that Rupa Goswami talks about the Gaurava servants in a different section, because the Sambrahma servants are complicated. There's 4 basic categories, and then one of the categories has 4 subcategories, and another this is complicated. So again, we're going to have a discussion on this, and please take notes. Please take notes. Sorry, that was the timer I set for the breakout room. Please take notes as to which of these servitors, or which of these categories of servitors most inspire us in our own service? So as we're hearing about them, oh, yes, this servitor, or this class, this group of servitors really inspires me to serve. All right, so all of those in servitors, they have this quality of being humble, of being in harmony with the Lord's will, being confident, and being submissive due to a predominant awareness of the Lord's majesty. Now, somebody may, this is from Jiva's commentary in 3.2.16. Somebody may ask, and we'll bring this up again. We had a question as to what about the servitors in Vraja? Well, they still have this kind of reverence that Krishna is the prince. He's the son of King Nanda. So even if they're not thinking of him as God. So this is for all the servitors. Then, as I say, we have 4 types. Now, again, please remember, this is in Vibhava Alambana Ashraya. The reason that why is Rupa Goswami putting this here? You know, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Nectar of Devotion, this is a guide to how to become Krishna conscious. So let's say a sadhaka devotee has this rati, this taibhav of servitorship. When they meditate on those qualities of the Lord, and when they meditate on these devotees, that will stimulate that rati. And then that will help them achieve rasa. So this book isn't meant to be theoretical. This book is meant to be an actual guide that by reading it, one's own rasa becomes stimulated. Now, because Dasya Rasa, the qualities of Dasya Rasa are there in all of the rasas, there's something here that can stimulate everyone. Of course, there's the kind of 180 degrees between Dasya Rasa and Vatsalya Rasa, although there's still Dasya. All right, so the 4 categories. We have the Adhikrita, or appointed servants, what Prabhupada calls appointed servants, Ashrita, those who are protected by the Lord, and we're going to see there's 4 subcategories of that. Parishada, we have our devotee Hari Parshad, who devotees sometimes call Hari Prasad. He says, no, I'm Hari Parshad. Parishada means those who are always associates, and Anuga, those who are following in the footsteps. And especially the associates and the Parishada and the Anugana, the always associates and following the footsteps, are the close servants, those doing close, intimate servants. Now, we had a question. We'll discuss this again in a few minutes, but some of the appointed servants are also under the protection of the Lord. So some servants can be, the appointed servants are like the demigods, but the demigods can also be in another category as well. They can be in 2 categories, right? Just like materially speaking, I can be an American and a female, can be in 2 categories. All right, appointed servants. So Rupa Goswami is giving evidence in all the sections. He always gives shastric evidence. So Jambavati and Kalindi are watching through the lattice work, and they're discussing about Brahma, Shankara, Indra, and others who are with their husband, Krishna. Now, devotees under the protection, remember we mentioned that, I said 4, sorry. There's 3 types, not 4, my mistake. All right, so those under the protection of the Lord, some want to gain freedom from fear, some want to gain knowledge, and some want to appreciate the Lord's service. So those who want to gain freedom from fear, they see the Lord as their protector. Those who were previously jnanis, but later understood the Lord's superiority, they wanted to gain knowledge, and they appreciate the Lord's greatness. Those who are fixed in service appreciate the Lord's sweetness. So we had a question, and I really appreciate all of those of you who turned in your questions, that someone said the desire for liberation, isn't that part of Brahman? not Shantaras. But those in Shantaras, as we discussed last week, sometimes want to be liberated so that they can glorify the Lord better. Those in Dasya Bhav give up the desire for liberation because you can serve the Lord in the material world or not. But those in Shantaras, many of them think, I want to be liberated so I can actually see the Lord better, like that. All right, so another way of understanding these three types of those under the protection are those, someone who wants the Lord as their protector is someone who was previously interested in karma, or in bhoga, and sense gratification. Those who want to gain knowledge were the previously jnanis who were previously interested in liberation. And those who are fixed in service from the beginning, they weren't previously in bhoga or previously in mukti. Okay, so some examples that Rupa Goswami gives. Those who are under the protection and shelter of the Lord, wanting freedom from fear. He gives the example of the kings who were kept in prison by Jarasandha. Okay, wanting freedom from fear, he gives the example of Kaliya. You have today shown extraordinary mercy to me, Kaliya, the worst defender, by marking my head with your footprints. So again, that's someone who wants freedom from fear under the Lord's protection. Wanting freedom from fear under the Lord's protection is another example. I have carried out the orders of my masters named lust, anger, avarice, illusion, and envy. They are not satisfied, nor are they kind enough to give me relief from their service. O head of the Yadu dynasty, I am taking shelter at your lotus feet. Please engage me in your service. Actually, Prabhupada, at least one place, talks about chanting the Mahamantra like this. I'm so embarrassed taking shelter of Maya. Please let me serve you. Now, some examples of devotees under the protection and shelter of the Lord who appreciates Krishna's greatness and knowledge are the Brahmanas headed by Shanaka in the forest of Naimisharanya. Other example of devotees under the protection and shelter of the Lord, appreciating greatness and knowledge, is those who are attracted. We have a mistake on this slide. Those who are attracted to meditating on the form of the Lord instead of being fixed on a supreme truth beyond meditation. Now, this is also a quality and anubhav of Shantaras. Remember, the qualities of each rasa are included, not necessarily all the actions, etc., but some of the qualities. They're included in the next higher rasa. And meditation can be a service. Meditation in Shantaras is just not because the Lord needs or wants service, but just out of a sense of the Lord's majesty. And meditation here in Dasiras is as a service. I mean, people that I love like it when I think about them, you know, just like, or I like it when people who love me think about me. Yesterday, when I went to dinner with my family, I was telling a story, and my granddaughter had to take care of her child, and she said, just wait, I want to hear the rest of the story. And I said, oh, you're actually interested in my stories. So meditating on somebody can be also a service. All right, then devotees under the protection of the Lord who are appreciating sweetness. And here again, we have some demigods like Lord Shiva and Lord Indra. So again, these are appointed service, but they're also under the shelter of the protection of the Lord, appreciating his sweetness, both. So some appointed devotees are only appointed servants, and some are in two categories. And we also have King Bahulasva and Shrutadev and Pundari. So devotees under the protection and shelter of the Lord, appreciating sweetness. Rupa Goswami gives this example. You attract liberated souls. Oh, you remember that was one of the qualities of Krishna that stimulates servitude. You attract liberated souls and even sages like songs of your glories. I dedicate my life to your service. Then the constant associates in Dwaraka, this is the Parishads. So these are like Uddhava, Daruka, Satyaki, Shrutadev, Satrujit, Nanda, Upananda, and Bhadra. Now, Uddhava was mentioned previously in the Southern Ocean as having a mixture of servitude and friendship, with servitude prominent. And there, when Rupa Goswami explained mixtures of Sai-Bhav, yeah. So there are some people who have mixtures. We'll see this especially when we look at friendship. There are some dominant friends who have mixtures of servitude. So you have, like here we have Uddhava, he's dominantly a servant, but he has a little friendship. Now, whenever there's mixtures of Sai-Bhavs, that devotee is referred to by their prominent Sai-Bhav. So Uddhava is referred to as a Dasya Bhakta, although he has some friendship mixed. Now, someone asked also, well, wait a minute, he's also in Vraja. Uddhava is also in Vraja as a creeper, which is in Shantaras. And that's a fact. In Chamakund, they say that there are 5 trees that are the 5 Pandavas. So there are devotees who are in Sakya Ras, in friendship, or in Dasya Ras, in service. Somebody and Shamananda needs to mute. Shamananda, you need to mute. And who are then also have a form in Shantaras in Vrindavan. Amazing, huh? All right, there's constant associates in the Kuru dynasty, like Bhishma, Maharaj Parikshit, and Vidura. And I find Maharaj Parikshit, I was surprised nobody asked about this. Maharaj Parikshit, how much was he on the planet when Krishna was on the planet? Not that long, but I guess as at least a child growing up. And yet he's considered a constant associate in this mood of service. Now, what's the form of the constant associate? So Rupa Goswami also does this, started with neutrality. When he's describing Ashraya, the devotees, as an impetus for love of others in the same rasa, he describes their form and their mood. And he may describe their form and mood in general, and then he'll describe the form and mood of some of the chief exemplars of that rasa. So he does that in each of the waves. So the constant associates now, they have lustrous bodily features. Their eyes are just like lotus flowers. They have sufficient power to defeat the strength of the demigods, and they're always decorated with valuable ornaments. And what's their mood? They offer their intelligence to the Lord, constant glorification of the Lord, crying in other sattvika bhavas, fearless and ready to do service. As I was going through this section of the servants, I thought a lot about other religions. And we talked about neutrality in relationship to other religions. But I also thought a lot about what you hear from Christianity. I'm not that familiar with Islam. Is very much, it has a lot of this Dasya in it. All right, now he's going to give again an exemplar. So he's giving an exemplar of the Parishads of Uddhava, because Uddhava is considered to epitomize the Parishad, the associates. So his form has a dark complexion like the Yamuna, wearing yellow cloth and the garlands used by Krishna. Uddhava has a nice statement about this in the 11th canto. Arms like door bolts and eyes like lotuses, chief of the Parishads filled with waves of bhakti. And again, why is this here? This is here because for those who have Dasya Rati, when they meditate on the form of Uddhava, that stimulates their own service. And the constant associates, Uddhava's mood is given. Uddhava says the controller of the demigods follows the orders of Ugrasena. He owns universes, but begged land from the ocean. He's an ocean of wisdom, but consults me. So this is a little indication of his mood. All right, now we're going to go to the Fourth category, the followers of the Lord. So the followers of the Lord in Dwarka. And my understanding is this category of servants are the ones that we think of when we really think about servants, that they're doing a lot of personal service for the Lord. So here we have Mandana, who holds the umbrella over the head of the Lord, Suchandra, who fans with the white chamara, and Sutamba, who supplies betel nuts. And again, Rupert's going to describe their forms. Their forms and ornaments, he said, are almost the same as the Parishad. Now we're going to go to the fourth category of servants again, the followers of the Lord in Vrindavan. There's Raktika, Patrika, Patri, Madhukanta, Madhuvrata, Rasala, Suvilasa, Premakanda, Marandaka, Ananda, Chandrahasa, Payoda, Bakula, Rasada, and Sharada. Now, of course, there's unlimited numbers. These are prominent ones. And again, he's going to describe their form. They're decorated with garlands of pearls, with bangles and bracelets of gold. Their bodily colors are like black bees and the golden moon. And they're dressed just to suit their particular special bodily features. I really like that. I love the individuality of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And they have particular forms and they're dressed just suitable for their forms. You know, in this world, people with different colored hair look good in different colored clothes, and people with somewhat different bodily shapes look different with different kinds of clothes, different cuts of clothes. So that's also true spiritually. And again, those who have a rati of servitude, by meditating on these persons, they become stimulated in their servitude. It can bring them to rasa. And what is their general mood? So Yasoda says, Bakula, please cleanse the yellowish dress of Krishna. Varika, you just perfumed the bathing water with a guru scent. And Rasala, you just prepared the betel nuts. So now we're going to look at Raktika. And Raktika is here in this picture. Because Raktika is the, again, epitome of the followers of the Lord in Vraja. So he has bodily color like newly grown grass, yellow clothing, and a beautiful singing voice. Raktika's mood. Please place me so that I may always be engaged in the service of Lord Krishna, who has now become famous as the lifter of the Govardhan hill. All right, so these intimate servants, remember I told you this is complicated. It's complicated. Remember, we have these four main types of servants, all right? And we had the appointed, those who are under the shelter, the associates and the followers. So the associates and the followers are of three types. And again, these are particularly the persons that we would think about when we think about servants. So the appointed servants, they're doing stuff in the universe. You can think of them, they're kind of like employees. They're running the Lord's business. And those who are under the Lord's shelter, they're also running the Lord's business, the Lord's mission. But these are personal servants. The Parishads and the Anugas are personal servants, especially the Anugas are personal servants. So they're in three types, which I found this really fascinating. So there's Durya, Dhira, and Vira, which Prabhupada translates as best, confident, and heroic. So the Durya, they do service for Krishna, Krishna's intimate friends, and their servants. So they serve Krishna, Krishna's intimate friends, and their servants. The Dhira serve Krishna's women. They don't necessarily serve Krishna. They serve Krishna's women, and they may do some service for Krishna. Mostly they serve Krishna's women, and they're a chief object of Krishna's mercy. Then the heroic or the Vira, they just serve Krishna. They just serve Krishna. They don't serve Krishna's associates. They don't serve Krishna's women. They just serve Krishna. All right, so some examples. The Durya. They express love towards Krishna, toward the lovers of Krishna, and towards those who serve the lovers of Krishna. An example is Raktika. He does service for Krishna and for Krishna's gopis. Then the Dhira, they don't have a specific service of the Lord, but they serve a specific service for one of Krishna's dear devotees, especially his queens or his gopis. You could think, a mundane example, you could think, there's a butler of the queen. He doesn't necessarily serve the king, he serves the queen. In American politics, we have our president and our vice president, and the president has a chief of staff and the vice president has a chief of staff. And there's staff that serve the president and staff that serve the vice president. And I'm sure the president, our president has a wife, I'm sure that there are staff who serve the first lady. I'm sure there's staff that serve just the wife of the president. Okay, an example is the son of Satyabhama's nurse. So when Satyabhama was growing up, the son of her nurse grew up like her brother. And when she married Krishna, he came along with her and acted as Krishna's brother-in-law. But he was serving Satyabhama. Then you have the Vira, they only take shelter in Krishna. They just do service for Krishna. And the Vira example is, I do not expect anything from anyone else. I simply expect the favorable glance of Krishna upon me. And the example is not even Balaram, not even Pradyumna, not even Satyabhama. And this is not offensive. Someone asked, well, is this like saying, I only serve Lord Chaitanya and not Nityananda, and it's offensive? No, this is a mood of love. It's a one-pointed love. I just serve Krishna, not serving anybody else, just Krishna. They're a personal attendant of the Lord. And we have an example from the Bhagavatam 4:20-28 of Prithu, where he said, I want to serve your lotus feet, and I don't care if the goddess of fortune gets angry at me. You don't need her anyway. You're self-sufficient. So you're going to let me serve your feet. And 3 ways of attainment of the last 3 categories of servants: the surrender, the personal servants, and the followers. Because the appointed servants, some of them may not even be in perfection. Some of the demigods are perfect, and some of them are not. And so the Nitya Siddhas, the Sadhana Siddhas, and the Sadhakas, and if you remember from the Southern Ocean, Sadhakas can also be an impetus to develop Rasa if that Sadhaka has already developed Rati. So the Sadhakas that can be impetuses would be those Nista and higher, if their Rati for the Lord has already developed. Prabhupada calls these neophyte perfect and eternally perfect. All right, so we're going to have a 10-minute breakout room to discuss which servitors of the Lord, which category of servitors of the Lord inspire us in our service. Which servitors or which categories of servitors inspire us in our service. 10-minute breakout room, please. Okay. I hope that was enlivening. We're going to look very briefly at the Vibhava Udipana, and then we're going to have a break. So some of the unique Udipanas, again, these are what Prabhupada would call impelling, of what inspires someone in their rasa. The causeless mercy of Krishna. Why the causeless mercy? Because those in Dasya Bhav, they consider themselves inferior to Krishna. They're recipients of his mercy. So that really inspires him, how merciful Krishna is to me. The dust of his lotus feet and his prasadam. Okay. Now, like the parents of Krishna, they don't want Krishna's mercy. They want to give Krishna mercy. Now you could say, well, the gopis want the dust of Krishna's feet, and the gopis want his prasadam. I mean, the friends, they're sharing food with Krishna, right? Krishna's friends are sharing food with Krishna. And of course, parents, sometimes the children put their food in their mouth, but the parents don't think of it, oh, I'm getting the prasadam. And the friends don't think of it like that. The friends think we're equals. We're just sharing food. They're not thinking, I'm getting your no, I'm getting the remnants of my master. And the gopis, of course, like Krishna's prasadam and the dust in his feet. So how is it unique for servants? But with the gopis, it's quite different. They're in the mood of a lover. And it's not thinking, oh, I'm getting something from my master. That's not what's going on there. Of course, there is some aspect of Dasya in conjugal. There is some aspect, to call the Lord, to call for the woman to call the male lover or male husband Swami or not. Nata is also there. So some aspects of Dasya are there that aren't there in friendship or parental. And then, of course, association with the devotees who are also in servitude. And this is true in every rasa, that the devotees who are in a similar rasa can be the shelter, the basic stimulant, and also they can be a general udipana. All right, so we're going to look just a couple of examples here, very few. So Bhishma for attaining mercy. He says, see Krishna's mercy to me, the most fallen. Krishna has appeared to me at the time of my death. And the way Prabhupada translates this is, I am most unfortunate. I have no qualification. I was opposing Krishna's most intimate friend, Arjuna. I even tried to kill him. I have so many disqualifications, yet still the Lord is so kind. Now there's udipanas for Dasya that also apply to the other rasas. Krishna's flute sound, his bugling, his smiling and glance, his footmarks, his qualities, the fragrance of his body. Remember, qualities can be in the Vishaya. If you think Krishna, who is so merciful, and they're in Udipana when it's the mercy of Krishna. The fragrance of Krishna's body, right? The mixture of aguru and sandalwood and camphor and musk. The appearance of a new cloud in the sky can be in Udipana and lotus flowers. So an example of the flute, hearing the sound of Krishna's flute, the 1,000 eyes on Indra's shaking body are shedding tears. Indra, of course, is one of the appointed servants. Okay, we have a 10-minute break. Please take a real break. Now we're going to go through the Anubhava of the Servitude Rasa. Again, this is a Sambrama Priti category. We're not doing the Gaurava Priti category. That will be class after next. All right, a little review that Anubhava, this is voluntary expressions of love. It can be Shita without strong bodily movement or Kshepana with strong bodily movement, and examples of Shita, yawning, singing, breathing heavily, disregarding others, drooling and smiling, and Kshepana, dancing, rolling on the ground, shouting, stretching the body, bellowing, laughing loudly, whirling around, hiccuping. All right, so the Anubhava for servitude. Some of them being completely involved in serving according to one's capacity, friendship with the Lord's servants, with an absence of even a trace of envy on seeing the excellence of other service. Wow. Being fixed in their love, which are all considered Chitta, are the special Anubhavas of the Dasas. So these are special Anubhavas for those in Dasya Bhav. Serving according to one's capacity, friendship with the Lord's servants, no envy on seeing the excellence of other service. By the way, that's not in friendship or conjugal. I don't know about parental, but it's not in friendship or conjugal. Friendship and conjugal, there's definitely this kind of competitive envy, spiritual sweet. Being fixed in their love. All right. We have an example given of Daruka, so absorbed in serving. So when Daruka was fanning Krishna with a chamra, his body became increasingly paralyzed. But because of that bliss would be an obstacle in serving Krishna, he did not welcome that ecstasy. And this again is something that's very, it's very unique to this Dasya Bhav. where they don't like the sattvic abhaves because I have to get my service done. I have to get my service done. For those in Madhurya Bhav, it's quite different. The sattvic abhaves they really see that as their service to Krishna, like Mahaprabhu said, where will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up and the hairs of my body stand on? And so it's very desirable at least in Madhurya, and to some extent in Sakya and Vatsalya, and even in Shanta, because they're not serving, but in Dasya, not so much. Completely evolved in serving. So prema has two qualities. So stamba, which is being stunned, and the other symptoms and the desire to please the Lord. So they're not attached to these symptoms because that can be an obstacle to their service. All right, Anubhava of dancing. Shrudadev became so joyful as soon as he saw Krishna that after bowing to the Lord's lotus feet, he stood up and began to dance. That's from Bhagavatam 10:86-38. Another example of Anubhava in servitude dancing. Although you are not an expert at dancing, your spectacular routine shows that you learned dancing from the guru called Prema. All right, going to the Sattvic Abhavas. Again, Sattvic Abhavas is when the heart becomes overwhelmed by one's rati, by one's love for Krishna, one's sthai bhav, either the primary or a secondary sthai bhav, and produces a state in the heart called sattva, which is not sattva guna. And this sattva then interacts with the elements of the body to produce these 8 involuntary expressions of love: paralysis, perspiration, horripilation, choked voice, quivering, change of color, tears, and fainting. And all of these 8 appear in servitude. Here's Rupa Goswami gives one example from Bali Maharaj, from Bhagavatam 10:85-38. Taking hold of the Lord's, oops, I have a mistake there. Grammar. Taking hold of the Lord's lotus feet, Bali spoke, it should be singular lords, not plural lords. Bali spoke from his melting heart. Tears of ecstasy filled his eyes, and the hair on his limbs stood on end. He began to speak with faltering words. So we have 3 sattvic abhavas there. And they're related to this sattva happening in the heart. Okay, Vyavichari bhavas in Sambrahma Priti category. So just a little review of the 33 Vyavichari bhavas mentioned in the Southern Ocean. And 24 of those appear in servitude: jubilation, withering, silence, disappointment, moroseness, reverence, thoughtfulness, remembrance, doubtfulness, confidence, eagerness, indifference, restlessness, impudence, shyness, inertness, illusion, madness, ghastliness, contemplation, dreaming, disease, and signs of death. These are sometimes translated differently in different places. So of those 24, in meeting, there's jubilation, pride, and perseverance. In separation, ghastliness, disease, and signs of death. Sorry. Now we're going to be discussing meeting and separation in great detail next class. Which are the 9 that do not appear? Well, you can go and figure that out. Then the remaining 18 manifest in both union and separation. Then we have, Rupa says that the remaining 9, they don't generally appear, but they can for a particular devotee in certain circumstances. All right, he gives an example of joy. The citizens began to speak to receive the Lord with choked voices in joy. their faces cheerful with affection, just as wards welcome their guardian and father. That's from Bhagavatam 1:11:5. Another one of joy. Bahulashva, seeing Krishna, fell to the ground, thinking he would offer respects 100 times, but being agitated by joy, he forgot to rise up. I like that one. Withering. As the sun evaporates all the water on the ground by a scorching heat, so my mental state has dried away the luster of my face and body due to separation. This is from the Skanda Purana. Again, meeting and separation we'll discuss next week. Disappointment. Indra says, I have thousands of eyes, but they have proved to be useless because not even for a moment are they able to see the lotus feet of the Lord. All right, we can take 10 minutes for questions on anything that we have discussed so far. Anybody wants to raise their hand?
Okay.
Anything at all? Advaita Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, Hare Krishna Mataji. My simple question is, when we are looking at Uddhava acting in servitude and in friendship, or some others, devotees acting in different rasas, is it also because that the rasas automatically, the higher rasas contain the possibility of the lower rasas? Not to say higher or lower, but in terms of our study and gradations. Is that the main reason? Or is it one of the reasons?
Well, Uddhava has mixed Staibhav. That his eternal Staibhav is mixed of servitude and friendship. So that's particular. Some devotees have Kevala or only one Staibhav, and some devotees have mixed Staibhav. In which case they're identified according to the one that's prominent. But then, yes, you also have, because the qualities, and it's important to understand, is the qualities, not the anubhavs, etc., but the qualities of each rasa is contained in the, we can say, the higher ones. So you'll see all the devotees engage in service. I mean, even those in Vatsalya ras, the parental ras, in one sense, they're the opposite of the servants. The servants see themselves as subordinates, as an object of mercy, and the parents and teachers see themselves as giving mercy. Right? But still, parents serve their children. I mean, they serve their children as much as any servant would do. They feed them, they dress them, they bathe them, but they're doing it not in the mood of reverence. Oh, this is my great master whom I'm serving. They're doing it out of my kindness and my mercy. I'm taking care of my child. So some of the qualities of Dasya are there in Vatsalya, but the mood is opposite. And then some people have mixed. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Mahalakshmi?
Yes. I have two questions. In Constant Associates, is mentioned Nanda and Upananda. And that surprised me because Nanda and Upananda is Krishna's father and Krishna's uncle, aren't they?
No, they're different people with the same name.
All right. So the question I wanted to ask then, if I thought it could be that.
Yeah. Just like in ISKCON, there's other people named Urmila.
Yeah, we have one Urmila here. Okay.
One time I got in trouble because of the actions of a different Urmila. Somebody thought it was me. Is there something else you can ask?
Well, yes. How is that this servitude mood is also called sthai rati? I thought the sthai rati, it means the permanent bhava or rasa.
Correct.
And this, so this is for all, it's not only for...
No, each rasa has a sthai bhav. Every rasa
yes.
has a sthai bhav, which can also be called rati. Those are synonyms, sthai bhav and rati. All
Okay.
the 5 rasas and the 7 secondary rasas, they all have a sthai bhav, a vibhav, an anubhav, a sattvika bhav, and a vyavachari bhav, all of them.
And another thing is that
But
Indra
they're
and
different for
Brahma,
each one. The sthai bhav for each rasa is different.
yeah. So Indra and Brahma are appointed servants, but they
Correct.
fight against Krishna.
How
I
do
mean,
they
Indra.
fight Krishna? Well,
Krishna wants-
some of the appointed servants are sadhakas, not siddhas.
Okay. And still they are considered as such.
Yes, but they're sadhakas.
Okay.
Prabhupada Priya?
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Usually we hear like when in relation to the gopis that when Krishna is having pastimes with the gopis, then there aren't any male personalities involved. But here it says that Raktaka is always attached to serving the most beloved of gopis. So how is that?
Actually, many times there are male persons involved. So there's descriptions in the Goswami's literatures of holy pastimes, especially at midday. So the nighttime pastimes, I've never read about any other males involved, but the midday pastimes in the Astakalila Lila, there's often cowherd boys and servants involved. And we're going to see when we study friendship, the Priya Narmasakas are very involved with sending notes back and forth and playing matchmaker, and they're quite involved.
So a servant in something like the holy pastime would be refilling Radharani's pitchkari or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are both male and female servants that are. Vinata?
Hare Krishna, I have a problem with these demigods because I understand this is a relationship between the soul and the Lord. And the demigods are, at least how I perceive it, conditioned living beings. And Indra is a position and Brahma is a position. So how is it that everyone who comes to the position of Indra or Brahma has a relationship, a soul that is in that position has a relationship of servitude to the Lord, or how does it work?
That is a very deep and thoughtful question. And that's the kind of question that it's good if I can get before the class, because that's the kind of question, why I asked to get questions, very difficult questions 24 hours in advance, is to give me time to ask other people and to do in-depth research. Like I had one question for this class that I, was researching all over the place for probably about an hour. So I'm not sure if I can really give you an answer kind of off the cuff as to what Rupa Goswami means when he's giving the example of these demigods in Dasya as Ashrita. But we do know that some of the Ashrita, the Ashraya, they're sadhakas. And sadhakas are still conditioned souls. In fact, in the Southern Ocean, it was mentioned in a general way that of the impetus for our devotional service, if we're looking at the Vibhava, Alambana, Ashraya, or the Ashritas, those persons, they are sadhakas. Now, they have to be advanced sadhakas, because only a sadhaka who's already developed some rati in a particular way can act as our Ashraya. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes. Now, it's a fact as far as udipana, one could have udipana of devotees in general. One could have an udipana of a devotee in another rati, and one could have an udipana of a devotee who hasn't even realized their rati. That could still be in Udipana. You know, you could have somebody visits the temple for the first time and they do something for Krishna, and that can act as an Udipana. But as far as Vibhava Alambana Ashraya, the person would have to be at least at Nishta. And they're still going to be an artist at Nishta and Ruchi and Shakti. But what I find interesting about your question, and which I don't know the answer to off the cuff, is could we, and my basic feeling is the answer is no. Would we say that all the jivas who have posts as demigods are eternally in Dasya above? And my answer to that would tend to be no. Because, I mean, Srila Prabhupada says when the living entity first comes to the material world, they take the post of Lord Brahma. So it couldn't possibly be, logically speaking, that anyone who has a post in a particular lifetime as a demigod is eternally in Dasya above with the Lord. That can't be the case. So what the explanation is, I really don't know. And one possibility, and this again is answering without having done the research, so I could be mistaken on this, is that those who are in Dasya above, when they see the demigods serve, because this was about the Ashraya for Dasya above. So those who have that rati, when they see the demigods serving Krishna and when they meditate on the demigods serving Krishna, it inspires them in their service. It acts, because again, this category is what inspires a devotee with that rati in their service. So if your eternal position is in Dasya, if your eternal position, that's your rati, that's your staibhav, it's a particular staibhav. When you see the demigod serving Krishna, you would become stimulated by that, even if those demigods would not have that as their eternal rasa. That's a good guess. That's what I would call an educated guess. But this is, again, this kind of really deep question. If you can possibly come up with it from your reading and give it to me at least 24 hours in advance, it gives me time to really research what our acharyas have said, and it gives me really time to consult with other senior devotees. And then I can give you a more authoritative answer than something based on Shastra-based Anuman. Lokapavani, and this will be the last one we'll take here.
Krishna, I just wanted to add, if I can, just something that I remembered while you were speaking now, that I heard from a lecture of Brihad Bhagavatamrita, how in Vaikuntha there are also forms of the demigods, because there are certain incarnations where Krishna appears in the form of a demigod. That's what I heard. And also they have such forms, so maybe it has something to do with that as well. So,
yes, it certainly could. In Vaikuntha, thank you for bringing that up. And according to Brihad Bhagavatamrita, the residents of Vaikuntha, some of them have forms like demigods, and some of them have forms even like demons. So that's something that's Rupa Goswami could be referring to that, but I just don't know. That's certainly a possibility. Okay. All right, now we're going to go over to the staibhav of the servitude rasa. And again, from Mahalakshmi's question, I want to make this very clear. Each rasa has a staibhav. Each rasa has a vibhav. Each rasa has an anubhav. Each rasa has a sattvic bhav. Each rasa has vyabhichari bhavs, and each rasa has a staibhav. The staibhav is what is permanent for the devotees in that rasa. And each of these bhavas can manifest before rasa. So for a sadhaka, each of these bhavas manifests separately before rasa. Rasa really starts at bhava and then is complete at prema. Okay, so what is the staibhav? What is the rati? How would we define the rati for Dasya rasa? And the main rati, the main feeling is eagerness to execute service with respect or with reverence. And we mentioned this before, but just touching on again, in Vraja, the reverence is not that Krishna is God, the reverence is that Krishna is the son of the king of Vraja. And he's a great and respectable person, materially speaking. if we see someone we think is great and respect, oh, I want to serve them. I want to serve them. I want to serve them. That feeling, the rati is the feeling, the essential feeling that doesn't become rasa until everything else is added to it. But that I just want to serve Krishna. He's so great. So an example is given of a kura. Today, all my sinful reactions have been eradicated and my birth has become worthwhile. Since I will offer my obeisances to the Supreme Lord's lotus feet, upon which mystic yogis meditate. Another example, when will I have the good fortune to offer respects to the Supreme Lord in the form of a cowherd boy, fond of the Kadamba forest on the bank of the Yamuna River? So someone asked, well, this offering respects, isn't it in Shantaras? Yes, but as we explained last week about Shantaras, those in Shantaras, they may glorify, they may offer respects, but they don't have a sense that the Lord needs or wants service. They're just doing that out of the joy of, oh, the Lord, the Lord. They have no sense of my Lord. Those in Dasya, with Dasya Rati, they have a sense, the Lord is my master. They have some mamata. The Lord is my master and he needs or he wants my service. So what causes Rati? Those who've achieved sadhana siddha, what's caused the Rati is the sadhana. That's usual. And sometimes mercy, which is rare. For the Nitya Siddhas, now this is an interesting question. We can say what the cause of Rati in a Nitya Siddha, and we had a question about this. And what seems to be the case, this is what I spent an hour researching yesterday, is that the Nitya Siddhas who appear on earth, what causes their Rati is they have their own internal impressions. And as soon as they see or hear about Krishna, it wakes up their eternal impression that appears to be the so-called cause. All right, so there can be intensities. And those you remember in neutral rasa, there were two intensities. In Dasya Ras, in Sambrahma Priti, again, this is a subcategory of Dasya Ras, there can be three intensities, prema, sneha, and raga. So we're going to hit these as we go up through the different rasas. We're going to hit these different types of intensities. So prema is when this sthai becomes very fixed and one is convinced it will never decrease. And there's particular anubhavas in prema, like complete attachment to the Lord. So an example is Bali saying, whether I go to heaven, whether I go to hell, I won't be disturbed. Then the next level of intensity of love is sneha. This is when prema gets thick and the heart melts and one cannot tolerate a moment's separation from the Lord. An example is Daruka. His melted heart produced gushing tears, and in separation he seemed like a wooden doll. Another example of sneha. Uddhava, who had a river of tears and choked voice when praying, having goosebumps and being stunned. And then the top level of intensity for those with the sthai bhav of Dasya is with Krishna, sorrow becomes happiness. Without Krishna, happiness becomes sorrow. And one will do anything to please Krishna, even giving up his life. And Parikshit, remember Parikshit was mentioned earlier as one of the associates of the Kuru dynasty. He was satisfied to hear of Krishna even though not taking food, water, or sleep. Right? Another example of raga. If Krishna is slightly merciful to me, I am carefree even in fire. And if I do not have his mercy, great wealth means nothing to me. And we had a question, is it only in fire? No, the fire is just an example. Okay, types of servants and their intensity of love. So the appointed servants can achieve utmost prema. Those servants under the Lord's protection can achieve utmost prema. The associates achieve utmost sneha. But some inhabitants of Dwarka, like Daruka and Uddhava, also have a touch of raga. And the followers, these are the real intimate servants. They can achieve raga. And generally in Vraja, the followers have a little bit of sakya, a little bit of friendship mixed. Okay, we're going to have another breakout room to discuss these intensities of love, prema, sneha, and raga, and the relationship between the intensity and the types of service. So we're going to have in this breakout room discussing this particular chart. So let's look at it again. The appointed servants that are like the demigods, they can have prema. Those are under the Lord's protection. Remember, they want protection from fear, or they want knowledge. They want protection from ignorance, they want knowledge. Or those who are always aware of the Lord's sweetness. And then the close associates who are in this mood of service. And the followers who particularly are doing personal service, they get to raga. And let's review what these mean again. Okay, raga, with Krishna, sorrow becomes happiness. Without Krishna, happiness becomes sorrow. And I'll even give my life. And let's review sneha. The heart melts and you can't tolerate being separated from Krishna. And prema, when you're convinced it can never go away. It's complete, it's fixed. Okay, so let's look at this again with our chart. Prema is when you feel like your Staibab is fixed, your Rati for Krishna is fixed. It can never go away no matter what. And that level of love can be achieved by the appointed servants and those under the Lord's protection. A feeling of sneha where the heart melts and you can't tolerate to be away from Krishna even for a moment can be achieved by his associates. And raga, where happiness without Krishna becomes sorrow, sorrow without Krishna becomes happiness, and you will even give your life for Krishna. That is for the followers, the very intimate servants. And remember that those were 3 moods, one that serves Krishna, his associates and their servants, one that just serves Krishna's associates, particularly the women, and one that just serves Krishna. All right, so why don't you take a minute to just make a few notes on this, because we're going to have a 10-minute discussion on this. So please take some notes. I'll give you a couple minutes to take some notes.
What was the other aspect of sneha? The heart melts and what?
And one can't tolerate a moment's separation. So again, prema is you feel, my feeling for the love is fixed. It will never go away. No fear that it's going to go away. Sneha, the heart is melting and you can't tolerate any separation. Raga, with Krishna, sorrow becomes happiness. Without Krishna, happiness becomes sorrow, and you will give even your life. Please take another minute to take some note. Okay, we're going to discuss this now in a breakout room, 10 minutes. So again, just to review, which we'll do every class, the relationship between these bhavas. So for each rasa, there is a dominant staibhav, a dominant primary staibhav of neutrality, servitorship, friendship, parental, or conjugal, and being acted upon by the secondary staibhavs, joy, anger, fear, etc., and the vyavichari bhavs, and being stimulated by vibhava, produces anubhavs and sattvika bhavs. So you have the staibhav being acted upon by vibhav, anubhav, sattvika bhav, and vyavichari bhav produces rasa, or the basic connection, a basic connection of neutrality, servitorship, friendship, parental, or conjugal gets stimulated. The stimulation Then there's the emotions that mix with that basic connection that produces voluntary and involuntary expressions, which altogether gives one a taste. All right, we have a few minutes. If there's any remaining questions or discussion, I have about 5 minutes. Vinata.
I haven't had a question. I just asked in the group. I was looking here in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu outline of Shanta Rasa, and it says Sthai Bhava is Shanta Rasi and 2 levels like ordinary and intense.
Correct.
No mention of prema.
The
And then-
ordinary and intense in Shanta. In other words, so Rupa Goswami has a template. He has a basic template for discussing each rasa. He defines the rasa, and he pretty much gives the same definition each time. When this particular rati is acted upon by vibhavas, varichari, subject, you get rasa. Then he describes vibhava ashraya, vibhava alambana ashraya for that rasa. Then he describes the vibhava alambana vishaya, vibhava alambana vishaya for that rasa, the vibhava alambana ashraya for that rasa, then the vibhava udipana for that rasa. Then he describes the anubhavs for that rasa. Then he describes the sattvic bhavs for that rasa. Then he describes the vyavitari bhavs for that rasa. Then he describes the sthai bhava for that rasa. Now, when he describes the sthai bhava for that rasa, he describes intensities of that sthai bhava.
Okay.
In Shantaras, the intensities are ordinary and intense. Those are the intensities. Once you come to Dasya, then the intensities are prema, sneha, and raga.
Yes. Does it mean that Shanta Rasa does not have prema? Shanta devotees, they don't have prema.
No, their intensity of love is just ordinary and intense.
So does it mean that the inhabitants of Goloka, not of Goloka, of Vaikunta, who are in Shanta Rasa, they are without prema?
Correct.
So could it be that they have arrived there just by one of the four acceptable types of liberation because they don't have prema?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Then you also have for each Daibhav, he has the meeting and separation. And you notice for neutrality, the meeting and separation is hidden and visible.
Mhm.
And next week, we're going to have an entire class on the separation and meeting for Dasya Bhav. Rupa Goswami goes into it in depth for Dasya Bhav.
Okay, one
And
more.
then he just, yeah.
And what about those in Goloka who have Shanta? But they should have some prema.
Well, what we see is most of the inhabitants of Goloka who have Shanta have some touch of Dasya.
Hmm.
Generally, we see that there's some touch of Dasya. It's entirely possible that there are residents of Goloka who have Shanta without a touch of Dasya, and they're not experiencing prema. They're just experiencing, one would assume, at least intense.
For the eternity.
But that's what they want.
Okay.
But please remember, always keep in mind that one's eternal position is what one wants.
Yeah,
So, so Shanta can be a stepping stone. It can be a stage to the other rasas, or it can be, this is what I want to be eternally. Maybe there's no Dasi at all. Maybe I'm a rock and I just want to be a rock. I just want to be there. I just want to see Krishna go in and out of the forest with the cowherd boys. I just want to see Krishna dance with the gopis. And, I just want to see it. I just want to be around it. I don't really want to do anything, but to be around it.
This Shanta in Goloka, it can also be a stepping stone. Once in Goloka and Shanta Rasa, you can still develop further if you want.
I'm not sure about the answer to that question. It seems reasonable, but I'm not sure. I mean, we also see personalities like Uddhava, who's in Dasya with a touch of friendship in Dwarka, but in Shanta in Vrindavan as a creeper.
Mm-hmm.
And the Pandavas are also in that category. We have a question from Maharaj in the chat. How can one be in Vrindavan without prema? Because one is in Shantaras. And that's, if one is eternally in Shantaras, if that's what one eternally wants to be. I mean, the only examples I'm thinking is something that's very static. You know, like a tree in Shantaras is still doing some kind of service with offering flowers. The cows have some kind of service, but I could assume that some rocks don't. They're just there. They just want to be there, and that's all they want. That's what they want. But the intensity of their love is not at the level of prema. It doesn't get that intense. So in Shantaras, it's either ordinary or intense, but prema is more intense. These descriptions are descriptions of what's more and more and more intense in terms of love. What is the difference between intense and rasa prematurely? Maharaj, can you unmute yourself and explain what you mean by rasa prematurely?
So, excuse me. I wanted to ask this, the difference between intense and the rasa, if there is no prema in development. So what do you mean by intense? And then rasa, or prematurely, rasa.
Well, I don't understand what you mean by prematurely. You mean if Shanta is a stage? You're
That's
muted.
a mistake. Sorry, that's a mistake. The difference between intense and rasa. Sorry for the premature.
Okay, so rasa, you have a sense that it's never going to go away. Oh, no, not rasa, I'm sorry, prema, in prema. What's the difference between intense and rasa? Intense is the description of the degree of love. Okay, let me see if I can understand what you're asking here. So if you have a staibhav of neutrality, talking about the staibhav, because this consideration of prema, sneha, raga in servitude and ordinary and intense in neutrality is the description just of the staibhav, just of the rati part of rasa. Is that clear? So the rati is your basic feeling toward the Lord. In neutrality is, I just want to be around the Lord. I just want to see him and glorify him. I just want to be there. In servitude, the basic rati is, I want to do something for the Lord. Now that I just want to be there with the Lord can be either ordinary or it can be intense. It can be, I just want to be there with the Lord, or I just want to be there with the Lord. And in servitude, it can be, I'm a servant, and that's solid. It's just solid. Okay, that's called prema. It's solid. Or I want to serve Krishna. And I want to serve Krishna. Right? My heart is melting in service for Krishna, in sneha. Or I want to serve Krishna so much, and I can't bear to be away from serving Krishna. I have to serve him all the time. I can't be without service for a moment. So that's sneha. And then in raga, if in the course of my service there's something terrible that appears to me as wonderful. And without service to Krishna, if there's something wonderful, it's terrible. And I'll die for the sake of my service. So that isn't there in just prema for the servants. The servants with prema are not thinking, I'll die for Krishna. So there's an intensity of that rati. Now, rasa starts happening at the stage of bhava. So rasa can only happen when one is completely free of anarthas. A sadhaka is not going to experience rasa. A sadhaka can experience a staibhav or rati, and a sadhaka can experience vibhav, anubhav, sattvika bhav, and vyavichari bhav as separate elements. Think about if you're going to make a smoothie. You get out, yogurt and a banana and whatever, dates. I don't know what you guys put in a smoothie. So, whatever you put in your smoothies, somebody puts kale in it. Anyways, you get out all your ingredients. That's a sadhaka, and a sadhaka of nista or above generally. very rare for it to be below Nista, may have experience of those elements, those ingredients. But it's only at the stage of bhava that they start to be blended. And at the stage of prema, and their prema is being used in a different sense, when you really drink it as a smoothie. So rasa is when all those come together. It's mature. It's mature. So there's also a Shanta rasa. And you remember there was a discussion in Shanta rasa. Is Shanta really a rasa? You remember that was there, that discussion last week. Is Shanta, can Shanta actually be a rasa? And the authoritative Shastric evidence was that yes, Shanta can be a rasa. It can be someone's eternal position and they can be experiencing rasa. But the intensity of the rati of Shanta never goes beyond intense. Yes, you've got it, Vinita. And Prema Charangani, and then we'll have to end. I'm sorry, I can't take everybody's questions. Uddhava has Dasya with a touch of Sakya, so how come he's desiring Santaras, which is a lower rasa in one sense? Well, I'm going to ask you, Prema Charangani, where does Uddhava have Dasya with a touch of Sakya? Where? In what realm?
In Dwarka?
In Dwarka and Mathura. Does he have that in Vrindavan?
No.
No. In Vrindavan, he can just observe. He can just be there. He can just observe. I mean, he might have, in some very short-term mission from Krishna in Dwarka in Vrindavan, but he doesn't have a service in Vrindavan as such. And he's not one of Krishna's buddies in Vrindavan. He's not running out to the pasturing grounds. In fact, he goes to Vrindavan only when Krishna is not there. Now we see the Pandavas, like if you go to Shamakund, the Pandavas are there as trees around Shamakund. So same thing. Now the Pandavas are in Sakyabhav, as we'll be studying in that chapter. But where are they in Sakyabhav? In Dwarka, in Indraprastha, not in Vrindavan. And so they want to see the pastimes of Vrindavan, but it's not their realm. So when they come to Vrindavan, all they can do is just be there and see. Just to be there and see. All right, we have now gone 7 minutes over, and I really like to be punctual. As you've all noticed, I like to start on time and end on time. I'll take 2 questions if we can do it briefly from people who haven't asked anything yet. Ratnam?
Yes, Mother, Hare Krishna. Mother, I am wondering, if you say a person in Shantarash in Vaikun, Goloka Vrindavan, is without prema, then in such a case, what's the difference between is in Goloka Vrindavan and also in Vaikunta? Yes, Mother, Vaikunta. What's the difference?
Because one jiva wants to be seeing and in connection with pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan, and one wants to be seeing in association with, that's a desire.
So that in case without prema, then how we attach with Krishna in Vrindavan? Because there it's ordinary dealings. He is maybe in Oran Reverence, ordinary dealings, Santaras in Vaikunta.
But he still has a feeling, just a feeling of I just want to be around the Lord.
So without prema, that means how do we attach? That's
okay. Prema is an intensity of a rati. And those in Shantabhav, they don't experience that intensity. They don't want to experience that intensity. If they experience that intensity, they'd have to get up and do something.
So the intensity differs from Vaikunta to Goloka Vrindavan. But same Santa, that's intensity differs.
Not necessarily, because there's Dasya Bhaktas in Vaikunta. So not necessarily. But someone who's in Shantabhav, they don't want that intensity. They don't like it if that's their eternal place. They don't, that's not the flavor that they like. Just like, you know, I don't mean to offend anybody. Or, you know, like in the UK and Sweden and stuff, they just eat this very bland food. Or even myself, you know, I'm from Northern European stock and I grew up in the American Northeast. And if you give me stuff with chilies, I hate it. I don't want to eat. And I'll tell you, don't put any chilies in my food. And somebody from the tropics, they say, then your food has no flavor. I'm like, that's not flavor, it's just fire. I don't want that.
Ah, okay. That's
I don't like it. And someone else is eating it and they're like, whoa, fire food. And I'm like, give me a potato. So with just salt and pepper on it. So different liberated souls who are full of love for Krishna, some of them, they don't want that intensity. So Kamalini, you're saying even a rock can serve. Yes, but it's not any kind of active service. And again, the difference between Shanta Ras and Dasya Ras is that in Dasya Ras, there's a feeling of mamata. My master.
my master.
My master. He belongs to
me.
Yes, in Shanta Ras, that is absent, absolutely absent. There's not even a my Lord or my God. And in Dasya Bhav, there's a feeling that Krishna needs me. He needs me. I have to get the betel nut. He needs me to get the betel nut. He needs me to give him advice. There's some sense like that. Like Uddhava was saying, he's the Lord of everyone and still he needs my advice. In Shanta, there's nothing like that. God doesn't need anything. He's Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnadudachite.
No reciprocation, one way, one monologue.
Exactly. And there's no sense they're glorifying God is great, but just because they're so happy. So of course, those in Shantaras end up doing some service. Krishna's pleased with them, but their mood is not that of giving service. They don't feel an inclination or. All right, it is now 11 minutes over, and I'm glad we had this Trishanticha or Manticha, but I really do try to be, I notice some people have left, which is just fine. So next week, we'll be going into having 3 classes on Dasya Bhav because Rupa Goswami puts so much in the Dasya Bhav section, which we could meditate on why he does that. And next will be about Dasya Bhav in meeting and separation. So he discusses this with each of the rasas, but for Dasya Bhav, he goes into it in depth. All right, so Krishna willing, we will see you all next week. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Rupa Goswami ki jai.
Thank you, Mother.
Thank you.